ever since I was a kid, I've had this fear of open water. It doesn't matter if it's a lake, river, or the ocean, I've always had a fear of jumping in. Despite this, I've always had a fascination for underwater photography, but my fear has always stood in the way of pursuing this. After putting off learning how to dive for so long, I finally decided to step into the unknown. For the first time in my life, I set out on an adventure I wasn't sure I could finish. Before getting started on the process to get dive certified, I decided to bring along my friend Adrian Gonzalez. We have both been on a lot of crazy adventures over the years together, like the time we drove through a whiteout blizzard in Norway, or when we won a Battle of the Bands competition. This type of adventure was nothing out of the ordinary for us. After Adrian agreed to join, I contacted a local dive shop and began the PADI Open Water Diver certification process. To get certified, you had to complete 3 steps. Number 1, knowledge development, which meant completing the PADI e-learning course. Number 2, confined water dives, which were training dives in a pool to learn basic scuba skills. And number 3, open water dives at real locations put our newly acquired knowledge and skills to the test. After we wrapped up our e-learning course, we headed out to the local dive shop to face our first challenge of confined water diving.
Hey, how are you?
Hey, how are you doing? You must be Lawrence.
I'm Lawrence.
Nice to meet you finally.
You are John?
Yes, John.
My name is Lawrence Ray, and I've been an owner of Columbia Scuba for 3.5 years now. Never intended to go into the scuba business, but the opportunity was there, and I thought, how cool would it be to be able to share what I love with other people?
I don't know if I'm more excited or more apprehensive about the whole thing, but I'm definitely excited for this experience.
Well, if you're apprehensive, don't worry about it. We're going to make you comfortable.
Awesome.
This is supposed to be fun.
Yeah.
So we're all about making sure you have fun and that you learn in a way that's safe. So you don't have any gear, is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
All right, so we need to take care of mask, fin, and snorkeling boots. That's the personal snorkeling gear. Okay, let's do that first. Let's go over here.
Awesome.
For the next hour, we worked on getting the right fit for all of our personal gear, making sure that our diving mask sealed properly, choosing the snorkel that best fit our needs, and selecting and getting fit for dive boots and fins. After finishing up a quick refresher class, we got fit for our BCDs, loaded up the car with all of our gear, and headed off to the pool to start our first ever dive. We are headed to the pool at the YMCA, and I'm super excited to get in the water and actually start putting some of the stuff we've read about and learned about and tested on in this e-learning to practice and see kind of how I respond in the water and how much anxiety or fear kind of comes up from all of this. So I'm really, really excited to see what's going to happen. As soon as we arrived at the pool, we had to do a quick physical test before we got started with training. The first test was swimming 300 meters in a mask, fins, and snorkel with no time limit. The second test was floating or treading water for 10 minutes. After we completed these physical tests, Lawrence introduced us to all of our dive gear. We were taught how to properly assemble, disassemble, and adequately test and inspect our gear before a dive.
We're suiting up, adding weight to our bags, going in the water.
When we finally got into the water with all of our equipment, this is where the real challenges began. Part of the training was learning how to deal with situations that can happen when you're deep underwater. Things like how to find your regulator if it gets knocked out of your mouth, or how to clear your mask if you get kicked by accident by another diver.
Yeah, first part of training was great for me. Doing the regulator, taking the regulator out, clearing it, and putting it back in your mouth underwater. Did not have a problem with it. When it came to the mask skills, however, that's where I kind of had some problems.
So first day of training was a lot of apprehension. I think I remember really shooting up out of the water a lot whenever I would start to panic during a mask drill or a regulator drill, or I just remember being very panicked.
Why do I hide? Why do I hide? When will I come out of this cave? Don't wanna die, don't wanna leave before I show my face.
A fair number of students struggle with mask skills. You know, putting water in a mask and then removing the water from the mask while you're underwater. It's counterintuitive, right?
When it comes to flooding the mask, it kept getting up my nose and it was kind of a little bit of a panic. And in my mind, I knew I could do it. I just needed to be able to do it a couple of times.
I've found more often than not that when you give people time to focus on it, think about it, and work through slowly, people figure it out on their own.
Next up is us going to somewhere in Florida to go do our open water dives, and I'm really excited about that. That's probably going to be the most anxious part for me. Like I said many times on this already, that's going to be really the challenge for me, and I'm looking forward to facing it. So let's go. All right, we are in Florida, headed to Blue Grotto for our first open water dive. There's things I'm nervous about still, and I'm just gonna have to get over it and get used to doing some of the stuff.
Yeah, this is the day where we take everything we've put, you know, all the effort into learning and all the training we did in the pool, and now it comes to life, literally in a open water scenario. So this is real.
For our open water dives, we would be diving in Blue Grotto and Devil's Den. During these dives, we would have to perform the skills that we learned during our confined water dives, but in much deeper water.
The area that you see right now is all an open part of the spring. So when we descend, you'll see a dark shadow underneath, and that's where the cavern entrance begins, okay?
Michelle was our scuba instructor for the open water dives. She had also dealt with fear during her certification process and almost quit scuba diving.
I won't lie, I was absolutely terrified going into training. My instructor had to hold my hand for 95% of the time underwater. I was clawing my way to the surface and just trying to get through the training and thinking, you know, I've tried it, it's not for me, it's time to move on. So once we get down, what we're gonna do, we're gonna giant stride off the platform here. And I was actually gonna sell all my dive gear because I never saw myself getting back into the water. But I thought to myself one day, you know, the best way to get over a fear of something is to just run straight at it full speed. What really helped was I went with one of my other instructors, Mike, to Cozumel, Mexico. And being in clear water with wide open spaces and I could see everything around me was really a game changer. So I just took off running with it, and somewhere along the way, I absolutely fell in love with it, and I couldn't imagine not doing this every day. So for dive 2, we have to do a fully flooded mask, okay? Same steps as the partially flooded mask. We're gonna power through, everyone's gonna do great, everyone's gonna stay calm.
I'm feeling good, I think. I'm ready to just get over with the mask skills.
Yeah, I think once we get your mask skills right, you're gonna feel good.
The moment Michelle was telling us that we had to go down into the water, we started going down, and I was not at all comfortable, having a very hard time breathing. And I knew as soon as we got to the bottom, the first thing we had to do was do mask skills, which I was already not comfortable doing.
You know, underwater, the more that you give your mind over to the things that distract you, the world starts to kind of close in, and you start to be very self-conscious and aware of yourself and the things that you're dealing with. I started suiting up. There was a lot of excitement, but it wasn't until walking up to the edge of the water and seeing where we were going to be diving that suddenly the realization started setting in of like, oh, this is it. This is the real deal.
It was in that moment, having successfully faced one of my childhood fears, that I finally could shift my inward focus out to the wonder that was around me.
Things in the world to be afraid of, but if we were afraid of every single thing that came our way, we wouldn't have any of these great, wonderful memories that we share with our dive family. I think we'd be missing out a lot on life and just adventure, and I know that sounds really corny, but I think it's true that there's a whole world underwater, and the majority of people will never experience it because of something like fear.
Even though I overcame this first challenge, there's one last fear that I will have to overcome in the future, and that is jumping into the deep of the ocean. Subscribe to Frame Voyager to stay up to date with that journey.